Welcome to Sudowrite 101. My name is Nicole. This is a very beginner class today. So if you're an advanced user, you might get bored with this. We're going to take things nice and slow going through Story Bible. I want to show y'all these real quick. For those that aren't happy with this class, or like, you know what, I needed more beginner level stuff. This how to use Sudowrite video playlist right here, this is for you. Most of the videos are under 10 minutes. You can see there are a couple of bigger ones, but this breaks down every single feature inside Sudowrite. So check that out if you're needing more basic beginner stuff. You know, maybe this class would be too overwhelming for you. If this class isn't enough for you, you need more advanced tips. Check out the 4-day Write With Me series that we did recently. And this goes really into depth into using ChatGPT, combining that with Sudowrite, how I start refining things, and I even show how I edit my stuff. So if you're looking for that more advanced, check out the 4-day writing series. One of the things I want to show you is when you're on your home page right here, you will see this live help classes and author hours. That is what this is. And if you click the register, it's going to take you to our Luma page. Y'all can take these classes as often as you want. We have people who've been using this for a year. They still even take the beginner class. And I especially encourage you to take classes with different teachers because we use the program differently and we teach it differently. So one teacher's methods might click better for you than, say, mine. Today's the 101 beginner. So to start a story, you just click this new right here, and you'll have it auto-named by however many projects you have. So that if this is your first project, it's going to be project 1. If it's your third, it's going to be project 3. And you can rename it to whatever you want. So I will say the first month you spend using Sudowrite is a learning process. People get agitated. I know, I've been there. I spent 2 weeks frustrated. Once you go through that month of learning, it really does get easier, and you become confident enough to start playing around with different features, changing things up, and experimenting. And that's when the real fun begins, y'all. So I'm going to go over some terms. And I do want to make sure before we dive in, I want to make sure everybody has the Discord or is in Discord. So if y'all go to the question mark, either on the home page or when you're in the project, go to the Join Our Discord. And that's a place where you can ask a lot of questions. We also have class recordings there. Make sure you join. So this is what I call Sudowrite proper. So if you ever hear me say that, this is what I mean, just this screen in general. When I say Story Bible, I am talking about this. All of these features. This is what was used to be called Story Engine. Some other terms we use, if we say the left navigation panel or just navigation pane, this over here is what we're talking about. These are the laser tools. And again, I don't expect y'all to remember all this. If you like the focused writing and you don't like all of this clutter, you can use these arrows right here to get rid of things. This is especially useful if you're one of those that's just wanting to write your scene and then occasionally ask the AI for help. You know, you can get rid of all that stuff. And you can keep them however you want right here. So Sudowrite uses words. Everything the AI generate comes out of your word count. So everything we're going to start generating in these boxes does come out of your word count. They are switching to a credits-based system. I'm not going to dive into that. In our Discord channel, there is a recording of our community hangout that was just done the other day. You can watch that. And the founders, developers, and the staff all got together and they explained the new pricing structure and everything. This is Story Bible. And if you hear anybody say Story Engine, again, it's the same thing. It just had a different name and a different look. So we're going to dive into all of the boxes. I'm going to go over what each one does first before we start creating the story. Again, this is a beginner class, y'all. We're keeping it simple today. Brain dump. So this is where you can put as little or as much information about your story as you want. I could keep it simple. And this is what I recommend people do if they're just learning it. I promise y'all, it's so much easier to start a story from scratch. And I know nobody wants to do a full-length novel from scratch that they don't have any interest in, don't want to publish. So I always tell people to do a fairy tale retelling. It's simple, to the point. You know any changes you want to make, and that helps you get a feel for all of these boxes. So in Brain Dump, I could just tell it to write a horror retelling of Snow White. And then I would go through the boxes, and it's going to do that. It's going to do its version of horror retelling of Snow White. I could go into detail if I knew things that I want to happen here. You know, if I wanted a certain dwarf to be a serial killer, I could put that information here. If I wanted Snow White to be the serial killer, I could put that. Whatever you want. So when I'm doing my stories, I typically load up this box. I put every detail I can think of. Who my characters are, what they do, what's happening at every step of the story. All my major plot points get put in here. If I'm doing fantasy, I might write out some terms. Like in one of my fantasies, I use the term ghosting, which is, you know, the vampires spiriting away and all that. So I give that definition and let the AI know that. So brain dump is where you put all of your details. It doesn't need to be coherent. You know, this could be a free flow state in this box. And when you click synopsis down here, this pulls from the brain dump and it'll try to make sense of all that rambling. Genre is just like it sounds. Let it know what genre you want to write in. If you want to do the horror, if you want to do a fantasy, young adult fantasy, all that stuff. I like to include genres and subgenres, themes and tropes sometimes. You could put all of that in here. Style goes for the style of writing that you want. If you know you like first person, third person, you could put that in here. If you know you want varied sentence structure, you could put that in here. If you know you want lush prose, lush descriptions, all of that, this is where you put it. Synopsis is going to be that summary of your brain dump right here. And synopsis is really the first step in editing the story and making it yours. And again, we're going to go through that. Characters, pretty straightforward. All your characters in the story. You can actually also put objects, you know, magical items that are very relevant for your story, heavily emphasized throughout it, and you want to put some details about it. You could put that here in your character box. You could put settings and locations here in your characters box. There's a lot you can do. And then, of course, for outline, it needs to follow this structure of Act 1, Chapter 1, Chapter 2. Your outline needs to follow this format. When people have trouble because their chapters aren't showing up in the drop down that you're going to see later, this is normally why. Not to call anybody out, I had a friend the other day, you know, she had Roman numerals. And at first glance, it looks like she, you know, it's correct. But it was just that simple little mistake. We need an actual number here. This is very important.
Nicole, can I ask a question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Under characters, is there a specific format, or do you list the character hyphen, their characteristics, their background, period, and then go on to the next one?
That's a good question. And on all of these boxes, if you hover over the question marks, you'll usually see that. So in this one, we need character name, colon, and then their description.
Okay.
It used to need numbers like, you know, 1 dot character, then the colon. You don't need the numbers anymore.
And then where would you enter, say you only want to write a short story of 50,000 words. Can you actually tell the AI limit this to 50,000 words?
So you can't limit it. And that's something we could go over more in either after class or in that 201 where I could show you how to manipulate some things. So you can't limit it as far as saying, hey, I want this many words. But in theory, the more beats, and we haven't got to the beats box yet, but you'll see what I mean. But the more beats you have, the more prose it's going to write. Less beats you have, the less prose. So that is one way to control it. Like if you know you want more or less, kind of adjust the beats that way. And I will say it used to default to where all the outline was automatically 12 chapters. You had to adjust it manually. For 12 chapters, me not trying to manipulate in any way, again, I was just learning the system doing this. When I went through and did all 12 chapters from my outline, by the time I did editing, each of those chapters typically turned into 2 or 3. So I ended up with like a 35K novel, just to give you kind of a base point for evaluation. So again, this is really important, and this is something we can manipulate later on for people that need more room. But that's something we'll go into for the 201 and 301. So those are all of our basic boxes. All of the elements that are going to go into your story. Scroll up here. When you hear us talk about chapter generator or the beats box, this is the box that we are referring to right here. If you don't have it, check this typewriter icon. Because if it's grayed out, there is no box. So maybe you were messing around with it, you had some beats in that box, and you go back into your thing and all of a sudden it's not there. Click this typewriter icon and that box will pop back up. So when we talk about beats, that is what goes here in this middle. Your prose is what gets generated underneath. Okay, so let's start this real quick. We're going to do that fairy tale retelling because they're easy. What genre do y'all want? And is there a specific fairy tale you would like to be retold in that genre? Or we can Mad Libs this. Mystery. Okay, got Hansel and Gretel and mystery so far. All right, so let's do a retelling of Hansel and Gretel as a. Now I know there's cozy mysteries. Forgive me, y'all. I don't write in this genre and I don't really read them. So do we just want to say mystery, cozy mystery, or is there another type of mystery? I'm just looking at chat real quick before I click enter. Okay. As a cozy mystery with lots of humor. Let's see. Let's give the siblings some characteristics here real quick. And this is all you can do. Again, you could put as little or as much information in brain dump as you want. I could leave it just as this. I could tell it just write the retelling of Hansel and Gretel, write it as a mystery, or we can start giving it these details. So the siblings, I want them that's all right. I like it. Siblings are twins and have an uncanny knack for, I don't want to go into that. That'll take me down a rabbit hole. Siblings are twins and have, we could do this, having it bordering on mean. I'm just reading the chat. So we want the witty banner. We should have scenes with comedic timing. And we're going to enforce the lots of humor. So the first thing that's really going to generate a lot is synopsis. And again, if you hover over these question marks, you'll see synopsis only pulls from brain dump. So it doesn't know any sort of style I want to write in. It doesn't know the genre. So you could put all of that information here inside brain dump. The story is a modern day retelling. Tone should be lighthearted and humorous. And you have 40 words to use in these boxes. So you can fill these up or you can leave it simple. I normally put even subgenres that don't particularly relate to mystery. I would put the subgenre in if it matches an element that I want to have. So if there's a little horror aspect I want to have, I would put that horror in here whenever I'm generating that chapter. You can change these boxes up, and you really should change them up as you work through each chapter. So if that particular chapter has some romance elements, I'm going to want to put that here in the genre so it brings that out. You can see right here, because the genre is affecting the tropes and the tone of the outline and the prose. So another tip is to load up this box with like your overarching story stuff, all of your themes and tropes that correlate to the entire story, not chapter specific. And then once you generate the outline, that's kind of baked in there, and then you can get rid of all the excess and keep it simple for each chapter. Style, I want third person, past tense. And again, you can load this up. Varied sentence structure. I have found, normally I would max this box out, but I have found here lately the AIs all do better with limited stuff in the style box. I don't know why that is now. I used to need to load it up to get good results, but doing just this lately is really bringing forth each AI style. So I recommend playing with that first and then layering in additional things that you need. Dismana, okay. There you go.
Yes, Brendan, she can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering, in which of these boxes say you wanted to do alternating chapters from viewpoints? Like maybe it's, say the first chapter is Hansel, the second chapter is Greta, and vice versa. What box would that be in?
So there's two ways you can do that. You can actually prompt inside a previous box. So normally if I know, I do actually have prompts that I use to guide how I want my characters formatted and my outline formatted, and I put the instructions here in synopsis. Let's just say I don't have room, my synopsis and all these boxes are full. I could generate my outline and there will be a rewrite box that pops up underneath, and I could say rewrite to be alternating between Hansel and Gretel's POV.
Okay.
But I recommend trying to fit it into synopsis, because if you rewrite, you're basically doing double words, because
Yeah.
both times it's going to come out of your word count. And we can do that. That's a good idea, actually. Now, I have seen people change up POV here. So if I wanted to do first person POV from Hansel's perspective, I have seen people do that here with no issue at all. A little tip for if you get to where you are maxing out these boxes, as of right now, it shows we have 11 words out of our 40 used. I'm just going to add in a couple of hyphens right here. And now I have 8 words. So when you put those hyphens in, the AI counts it as 1 word. All right, so we're just going to generate our synopsis right here. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, another question. So you said under Story Bible, we're entering all the information for the main story. Can you just clarify one more time? Because I don't think I understood it. Then we go into each chapter, but yet we can change descriptions in Story Bible for each chapter?
Absolutely, yeah. So I can do all this if I'm just wanting to load this up, because I know all my overarching themes, and this is one of those things I have here. We find it, maybe this seeing it will help give a better example. Okay, so I actually have this template. This is something I worked hard on, and this is actually how I used to load up my genre and style boxes. Genre is still pretty much the same. So when I'm starting a story, I like to give ChatGPT this little template and my outline. And then I'll ask it for all of this, or my story summary, even if I haven't got to my outline part. And I will ask it to fill this template in for me. It'll give me the results, and everything I agree with, I go ahead and put that in my genre and style box, so that whenever I get to my outline and it generates that outline, all of that stuff that is in these boxes sort of gets baked in. That's a tip I learned from Marigold. So whatever you have here, whenever you generate your outline, it's essentially baked into that. So I would put my overarching stuff, and then I would delete all the excess and only have in what pertains to that chapter I am working on. Because think about it, and I always use the horror and romance as an example because they're such extremes. If you're writing a horror novel, you know how, think about Jason and stuff like that. Friends are at the camp, at the cabin, they're having a good time, right? Well, if I'm putting horror in here and I'm asking for bloody descriptions of gore in my style box, well, guess what? Even though that first chapter is not meant to be that way, I know I don't want something horrible and bloody to happen in that first chapter. I told the AI that I wanted it. So it doesn't matter if my beats and story, don't hint at that. I still told it here that I wanted it to add those bloody descriptions of gore and that I wanted it to be a horror. So that's why it's important to change it up per chapter. Okay, so synopsis, as I said before, it's the first place where you can really start making this story yours. Edit this as you go, and especially if this is your first month and you're learning how things work. This is where I would read through, I would add in any details that came to mind for the story, or I would make any changes. So let's look through this real quick. In a quiet town nestled in the countryside, twins Hans and Greta Humperdinck, isn't that from Princess Bride? Are on a mission to solve the mystery of their missing neighbor. Known for her famous gingerbread cookies, Miss Kruger's vanished without a trace. They're known for their quick wit and sharp tongues. I like that. Embark on a hilarious journey to uncover the truth. And you can see here where it kind of gets on the nose with things. So you do have to watch your wording sometimes, but I'm okay with that being in the synopsis. As the investigation progresses, the stakes rise. They find themselves in sticky situations, run in with a mischievous witch. So this is where you can start getting specific. Because keep in mind, if I just tell the AI this, it's going to decide what those stakes are. It's going to decide the outcome of all of these situations. So if you know what you want, tell it what you want. Be specific. I always say, don't give it the chance to be confused. Don't give it the chance to make up its own thing if you know exactly what you want. If you're just learning, you don't really have a preference for how this plays out, by all means, leave it, see what the AI comes up with, and adjust as needed from there. Right, not just the witch they need to be wary of, culprit behind her disappearance. Okay. So maybe when you read this, you decided you knew who you wanted to be responsible for it. And you could put there, the stepmother is responsible or something like that. Again, make this your story. This is where you start playing with it, start seeing how your edits affect everything. And this is usually just a little wrap up. I want to keep it. We wanted to do alternate POVs, or somebody had suggested that, so I'm going to go ahead and prompt it here. Something to keep in mind when you're prompting and get used to prompting. Every once in a while, when the LLMs that Sudowrite uses or Sudowrite itself makes an update, sometimes our prompting won't work and we need to reword things. So it can be a bit of a hassle, but everything still works. We just have to usually reword things. So just keep that in mind. If you get accustomed to doing certain prompts, you may need to change it up later on. I want to go ahead and generate the characters. Witty and resourceful young man in his late teens. So this brings to mind those who are doing romance stuff. You cannot do sexual content involving minors here. That includes backstory stuff. So if your story is mostly revolving around an adult woman, but maybe there's the flashback of something that happened when she was 14 or 15 to her. If that's sexual trauma, it's not going to do it. Well, Weaver might, but you still might encounter issues within these other boxes because these all use OpenAI. So for the sake of preventing some frustration and saving some time, if you're doing romance, make sure you mark how old they are. So if you have a specific, a character's 27 years old, put they're 27 years old. If you just want to say early 20s, put early 20s. And again, keep in mind this late teens, that could have some consequences. It might say it doesn't want to generate a scene if I were trying to make any sort of sexual encounter here. So if you're needing to do a flashback or something like that, where they were a minor, I recommend just saying here they're 18, because you're not going to need to mention that age in that flashback a lot. So I recommend doing 18 here in the box, getting that flashback scene written and generated, and then in your edits, just simply change the age to be appropriate for whatever you need. Not yet. I actually don't know if this one's 3.5 or 4. They are working on a bunch of changes coming out soon. But I know eventually, I think a goal is to have us determine which boxes use what model. But that would be way down the road. There's so many other updates in front of that. You'll see these characters. This is one I want to mention. The character box, lots of requests to make this bigger, and that is one of the things they will be working on. They're working on some updates right now. They need to get those out. But with the recent announcement for the pricing structure change, they are going to be able to start giving us bigger boxes. Before that was an issue because they would have had to possibly raise cost. Now they won't have to do that.
And Nicole, can I another follow-up question? In Brain Dump, I've written I've written a lot of books, and if I'm doing a continuation on one of the books under Brain Dump, could I put how the second book ended and then where I want to head with the third book, and so it learns kind of the theme and where I was and where I'm headed?
Yep. So if I'm doing that for my series, I will typically just do something in parentheses. Like I've done it to where my wording isn't going to be right because I don't remember exactly what I put. But I was doing a romance series, and I knew in the second book I wanted a couple to be the main character, the new main characters for that second book. But in the first book, they were still in scenes together, and I didn't want the AI to start developing any sort of sexual relationship. But I just said something along, this isn't going to fit for this story because they're brothers and sisters, but I'm going to use their names and pretend they're not brothers and sisters here. I told it, I don't remember close to my exact wording, it developed the relationship between, I can do things like that to where it knows to try to keep that. Now, is it going to be perfect? No, but I've at least told it to where it can guide it more towards this. I'm telling it I have the second book is where their relationship is going to evolve. So let's keep them as friends right now. And I have told it before, and I use parentheses to separate that information. So if it's information that the AI needs to know to write the story correctly, I put it in parentheses. If it's instructions, me telling the AI, do this, focus on this, write this way, I put those in square brackets. It doesn't matter to the AI what symbol I use, but it helps me distinguish everything more simply. So if I was doing, just a minute, Manal, in the previous book, I'm going to put what I had for another series. In the previous book,
Okay, so you're letting the AI know here's the backstory.
yep.
Okay, that's what you're letting. Okay.
Yep.
And then any recommendation on amount of words, to how much should we let AI know? But I guess I answered my question. That's dependent on what we're looking for. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Only keep in mind, you don't need to give it the whole story, only whatever is pertinent to this story. And this isn't the only place you can do that backstory information. I'll show you in Beats, you could actually do that as well. So you aren't limited here, but yeah, I would only give it what is really affecting this story right now. This whole story is what I would put here.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, Anna?
I was wondering, did you check your character is doing the same thing than me? Gretel is called Greta. Is there a reason for that?
It changed it here in the synopsis because I told it to do a retelling. And so it changed it here.
Okay, you did the same thing in mine, so okay. That's that would answer that.
So we have our characters, and this is another place you would go through. You would make sure all these people are have the descriptions that you want. If you want them to look a certain way, you would change all of that and make your edits as needed. And let's do our outline. So if you click the arrow, you have these choices: novel outline, hero's journey, Hollywood beat, story circle, romance. Story circle is helpful for those who don't want a lot of chapters generated. It follows Dan Harmon's story circle theme. So if you don't want a lot of chapters generated, you might want to go to this one. I typically stay with novel outline. It's just one that I like. Novel outline considers your genre, whatever is in your genre box, and all of the information that you have so far. So it adjusts the story and gives you however many chapters it thinks you need. But you could also prompt it inside the genre box. If you want 30 chapters, you can tell it in the genre box to write 30 chapters, and it should follow that. And you can see here, it is not doing the alternate POV. While that's generating, I'm going to look at my prompts real quick. Let me go to my old one because I know I had it in here. I don't normally do the alternating POV right there because I like to do that in my edits. Let's see. And these are basically, I know it looks like a lot, y'all. It's just basically rewording that same prompt for different things.
You have to think about it. Maybe it's the outline where we should probably direct it.
You
there.
can do it both ways.
Okay.
And this is what I mean, like whenever you get used to prompting, things might change and you have to change up your prompting. I'm not seeing my alternating POV, and it's going to waste too much time to go through it. So I could come down here. It's now finished. Now it generated how many words? So it generated 677 words for my outline. I'm going to come down here and use the rewrite outline and tell it to, I could be more specific, and that's probably where I messed up, but I want to try this simple prompt just to see. If it messes up, I'm going to tell it to be more specific, or I'm going to be more specific with my prompt. Okay, so it gave us that here. So that one's working. So what I could have done while that's generating, I could show you up here. So for this one, I could have said each chapter should alternate POV between Hans and Gretel, with odd chapters as Hans's POV and even chapters as Greta's. So I could do that to where that's helping it guide it a little bit more. And if you don't want to do it this way, you could also use that style box, or you can use a beat header, and I'll show you what that is later on. But you can also alternate there. So there's lots of places you can change things up to fit your workflow. So it used 677 words previously. After rewrite, it used 704. Both of those came out of my word count. That's why I try to prompt in previous boxes to save myself some words. And again, I would go through all of this and make any changes. And we're going to keep this simple in the 201 and 301. I'll go over more about how you can actually manipulate this outline box a lot, depending on the story that you need to tell. But there are so many different ways that you can actually format this. As long as you're keeping that Act 1, you don't need all of this. You don't need all of the chapter heading things. I usually delete all of that because I want the word space. As long as you have your Act 1, and then each chapter looks like the chapter, the number, and the colon, you're good. You can basically format this any other way. And again, we'll go into that more in the 201s and 301s. So I have 15 chapters here. And to hammer this home about how important formatting is, I am just going to make some changes here. So if I go to my drop down, you'll see I have 15 chapters, right? I'm just going to make a mistake. This is actually one. So I got chapter 9. You know, I forgot to put my 0 here. I meant that to be chapter 10, chapter 11. It's still going to read through as being chapter 10. If I don't put this Act 1 up here, now have 12 chapters. Things start to get very confusing later on. So keep in mind, Act 1, chapter, number, colon. That's important. All right, let's pick one that has some action real quick. So if you edit that here, it's going to use your edited version. Let's see, the begin their investigation. Let's do chapter 5. Looks like it might have a lot of dialogue in it. So 2 ways I can start a chapter 5. I can come down here, pick chapter 5. I just naturally gravitate to using this one. So I'm going to tell it I want to do chapter 5. It's going to pop up with that document and bring us to the top. So if I get here and I decide I need to make some changes, oh wait, I don't want this to happen yet. I can jump down here to outline again, make my changes. I'm going to cut this out real quick. Go back to this chapter 5 and you see that it changes it in real time. Sorry for the scrolling, y'all. One more time. All right, so again, this is the chapter generator beats box. So if you hear us refer to that, this is what we're talking about. For anybody who came in late and didn't see us, if you're not seeing this box, check this typewriter icon right here. That gets rid of it. And it doesn't look like it, but you can actually type here in this document. Your prose is going to generate underneath. I'm just going to go ahead and generate the beats again, because we're keeping this simple. That's what we're going to do. But again, in the later classes, we will actually go over the ways you can further guide the beats in outline and here. There's so many ways. Once you get past that learning curve of that first month with Sudowrite, you'll see all kinds of ways you can really manipulate everything and guide it closer to your vision. Manon, Tabby, have I missed anything in chat?
No, everything is up to date.
Thank you, ladies. For anyone who speaks other languages, Manon hosts, forgive me, Manon, is it just called French or is it called like foreign languages or something? Your classes, do you want to talk a little bit about that while we wait?
Yeah, it's foreign languages. So I speak French and English, but we have people which are Italian, German, all different places in the world, from China, Japan, and all that, to learn to write with Sudowrite in a different language. So basically it's 101 to 401 in 2 hours.
And if y'all noticed, I had to cancel it. It looked like it locked up, so I just canceled it and regenerated. So if y'all need foreign language, get with Manon. She has some awesome classes. You also have your own little Discord channel to discuss things. And
Yep.
Tabby will be hosting some writing craft classes soon.
And as a bonus, people which comes to my class have access to plugin, because we need a plugin to write in different language.
Okay, so these are our beats. And honestly, I want to say it's the most important, but I don't want you to just diving in, learning all about beats. Master all of the other boxes, because in my opinion, they're easier to master. And this one is almost like an ongoing thing where you never quite master it, but it's close. And I say you can't master it because I always find new ways to do things here. That's my issue. I keep experimenting and discover something new and awesome. But this is where you can have so much control over your story. So yes, you have a limited character box, you have a limited outline box, but you have 2,000 words you can use just for this chapter or scene, whatever you want to call it. 2,000 words, and you can see it only generated 474. I could fill in all of the details that I want right here. If I want a character to say something at a certain time, I can put it in relation to that beat, you know. Hans tells the witch to, you know, go to hell, something like that. I can put that in here. If I want the Greta to act a certain way as a reaction, I can put that in here. Tell the AI what you want. Again, if you're not telling it, it's going to make up its own mind and do the story the way it wants to. So this is your chance. You have 2,000 words here. Tell it everything. Tell it the weather, the time of day, describe the setting that you want, whatever you want to do. All right, let's look through this real quick. This is new. I've never really seen that before. Interesting. Okay, so this is a beat and this is a beat. So you see we have 15 beats total, right? You'll also hear us say stride. A stride is 2 beats, and that's how the AI writes. Once we start generating prose, it generates it in strides, 2 beats at a time. If you don't want it to do that, if you only want it to generate this 1 beat, you're going to have to cut these out. Take these out because it will automatically write 2 beats at a time. I mentioned beat header, so I'm going to show that real quick. So for a beat header, I can give it some more style guidance up here. We're going to pretend this wasn't in my style box already. This is Hans. I'm just showing you other places you could put stuff like this. So I can put it here. And this is focused on them interviewing people. Focus on Hans and Greta's. My word, I normally spend like 20, 30 minutes on my beats box, y'all. So having to think of stuff on the fly like this, it doesn't come out well. But I could go on to, I could tell if I wanted it to use vulgar language. Use vulgar language when Hans and Greta question the townspeople, stuff like that. There's all kinds of little things you can do. So this is what we call a beat header. If you come to check beats right here, you'll see there's the header, and it starts our beats 1 through 15. It does not matter about the numbers. I can remove all of these numbers. If I delete this, come down here, it's still showing my numbers there. I could have random numbers here. I can make it all out of order. Number 5. Number 7. Again, when I come down here, it's in order. So clearly numbers don't make a difference except for this one right here. This one separates the header from your beats. It tells the AI, okay, everything in front of this is the beat header, everything after this is a beat. So if we scroll down, since I removed that number 1, it's now including that as part of my beat header because this is the first number now. So this is the only number that matters, having 1 right here. I don't want to confuse myself, so I'm just going to put those back real quick. So if the numbers don't really matter, what is it looking at? It's looking at these carriage returns, y'all. You see there's a bunch of space after this, new line, starting this new beat. So if I put those 2 together, I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to put this one together. I'm just kind of joining it up to how I think would make some good prose together. So it's showing I have 15 beats number-wise, right? I really only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So if I scroll down here, sure enough, only 13 beats because I combined those. So now when it writes, even though I combine those beats, that doesn't mean, okay, this is now a stride. It's still looking at what is the second beat, and it's going to make this the stride now that it writes in. You hide this. You'll see it's going to estimate with my beats how many words it's going to use inside prose. And then I'm going to generate, let's generate most accurate while I talk about stuff here. So if I want to, now that it's writing, actually I can actually pause it. And it's just going to finish up. Again, it's writing beats 1 and 2. That's a stride. Right. So I paused it after it started, and now I have the option to restart, which means it's going to start over at that first beat again, or I can just continue. Most accurate is GPT-4. Best Prose is Claude 2. Fastest is GPT 3.5 Turbo, and unfiltered is Weaver from Answer Tech. Unfiltered doesn't have a care in the world what you write. It's not going to say, no, I can't write that. The others have a chance of doing that if it's, violent, particularly violent, or like non-consent, sexual, stuff like that. Unfiltered doesn't care. But if you want unfiltered, I highly recommend watching our Weaver video that's in the Discord channel, because you do need to prompt it a certain way to get the best results. Unfiltered really likes to make up its own mind how that story is going to go. It doesn't care what you put in the box. So you have to do things a certain way. So again, GPT-4, Claude 2, GPT 3.5, Weaver. Let's just say, I'm going to look through this real quick. So I don't like this. So when I pause it, I can make all kinds of little edits. I can change the dialogue here. If I wanted to add in some curse words, if I wanted to make things scarier, more ominous, whatever I wanted to do, if I wanted to make the conversation go in a different direction, I can make all of those changes, and then I can click continue. And it's going to take any changes into account that you made. So this is a good way to really get your style in there right away. I always tell people you're either editing now or you're going to edit later to really bring out your voice and your vision. So it's up to your workflow. I normally let it go. I let it generate the whole chapter, and then I just do my edits later. A lot of people like to edit as you go. So it does take all of your edits into account. All right, so it generated some more. And again, we stuck with most accurate, but let's say I want to go to Best Prose now. So I can switch it right here and then click continue, and it's going to take over and do that model. So I can mix and match all of these models right here. If I want to start out in fastest, I can start out in fastest. I can switch to unfiltered. I can do all of that right here, and it's just going to keep going. For the sake of demonstration, I am going to copy these beats. Oh, I forgot to take that out, actually. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave that in there. I'm going to copy these beats and generate a new chapter 5, just so we can see that opening stride in all of the models. So that one was most accurate. I'm going to paste those beats in here, and we're going to generate in Best Prose. And I'm going to let it go through the first stride. Yes, Weaver does cost words. And after I generate these where we can compare, I'll give you my thoughts on each model, the pros and cons of them. And then maybe if Manon, Tabby, or anybody else that's used this a lot has something to say about each model, I'd love for you to speak up or put it in chat, your opinions. All right, so that generated our Best Prose. And this will be fastest. And fastest is actually one of my favorites. I don't think it gets enough recognition. I love fastest. It tends to do the most dialogue, and I just love its output. And I'm going to let it go because it normally runs very fast. It used to be faster than this, actually. It used to be I didn't even have time to pause it if I wanted to. But you can see it's going a lot better. It's already through 7 or 8, whereas the others were still in the first 2. I'll go ahead and stop it there. And then one more time for Weaver. Now, when Weaver's going, if you're watching it, you will see it pause a lot. That's because Weaver's output is naturally very small. So on the back end, Sudowrite had to do some prompting to get it to give us more output. So you'll see a lot of times it pauses mid-sentence, and then it'll pick up. Sometimes that'll make it have like a misspelled word, but nothing major. So you can see here it's pausing, and then the back end prompting will kick in, and then it'll continue. All right, so again, I recommend watching the Weaver class that is in Discord. And let me grab the Discord thing while that's going, just in case. All right, so in Discord, there's this course videos channel, and you can see all kind of stuff here. And this using Sudowrite's unfiltered mode, that is where we discuss Weaver and how you need to prompt it. Like I said, it's very different from the others. All right, so this one's finished. Let's start with Weaver. I like Weaver's style. I swear in class, these things like to prove me wrong, but normally Weaver's style is very close to my natural writing. That's why I lean towards it. And again, it doesn't care what you write. It's not going to tell you, oh, I don't feel comfortable writing that. I can't do this. So it's really good for bringing in its own flavor and not caring what you write about. It's just going to keep going through it. Let's see. It opens Small Town of Maplewood. I like it. Not a bad opening. Needs some work, but not a bad. And you can kind of see how Weaver writes right here. So again, the good thing about Weaver is it doesn't care. The bad thing about Weaver is it likes to make up its own ideas. So you need to be careful how you use it. When you're doing Weaver, and this is just the simplified version, you need to watch the video. But if I'm working with Weaver, I will not leave all of these beats here. I would cut these out, paste them in another document just so I don't lose them. Do all of this, and I'm not going to explain all this. We can do this later in another class, or you can watch the video. But this is how I would prompt Weaver. So it only sees these 2 beats. Whenever you have more beats, it starts going off the rails. Even pausing doesn't work. If I ran this and just paused it and tried to continue thinking that would keep on track, we tested it, that doesn't work. So when you have these beats and you click that generate prose button, what the AI does is it reads through all of the beats before it starts writing. So it knows the ending, which is a good reason whenever you're in Most Accurate, Best Prose, things like that, to make sure this last beat ends exactly the way you want it to end, because the AI is going to read all of this stuff before it starts generating prose at all. That means if you made this last beat or 2, however you want to do it, if you made those reflect the ending that you really want, then the AI is going to see that and it's going to start working towards that as it's writing these other things. So y'all saw Weaver's style. This one was fastest. And I mentioned it, I love fastest. I think it's the underdog. People don't really give it enough credit. It tends to give me the most dialogue, and I just love reading through it. There's only been a few times I can think of where I did not like the output from fastest. If you're writing a fight scene, I find it does those very, very well. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you have a boring scene where you really need it in your story, but you need to amp it up a little bit somehow, try it with the fastest mode. And you can see that. And then we have our Best Prose. And Best Prose is my other go-to. It's actually the one I probably use the most, that and fastest. I tend to use Weaver, the unfiltered one, for my sexual scenes because Weaver does something different versus the other tend to repeat a lot of the same type of things. There is Best Prose. And then we have Most Accurate. Most Accurate is going to follow your beats very closely. If that's what you're wanting, you know, hey, I need the story to play out this way. This might be the model that you want to work with. It's going to do exactly what your beats say. And to me, that's also the downfall of Most Accurate. Let me scroll up here and see if there's any that I could point out. So like in this one right here, Agatha becomes defensive and dismissive and the subtly asking about Mrs. Kruger. In Most Accurate, I find it tends to put these types of things almost verbatim into the prose. So it would probably put something about noting her suspicious glance and furtive movements. To me, that's the downfall of Most Accurate. But there's a lot of people that like the output from it. So play with them all and see what you like. Best Prose. It's not as bad as Weaver for making up its own ideas, but it also tends to get sidetracked. So it'll read what you have, and then it might decide it has a better idea, and that's what it's going to write, y'all. If you're open to ideas like I am, that's great. I always get a ton of ideas from Best Prose. If not, but you really like the output from Best Prose, again, I would do the method of getting rid of these excess beats and only doing a couple of beats at a time, a stride at a time, to help it keep more on track. And as I showed y'all in this one, we could easily just mix and match all of these. So if I like them all, I could generate with each one right here. So I'm not a fan of Most Accurate, but it does stay on track. I love Best Prose. It doesn't stay on track. I love Fastest. And I like Weaver too, the unfiltered model. Manal or Tabby, is there anything y'all would like to add about the models? Like things that people may like or dislike?
I kind of put in the chat there that I use most accurate when I write the autobiography or real story, or I want a lot more description. I like it like most of us for the first prose to get the entrance into the chapter. But when it comes to write scene, which like with children, I prefer the best prose.
That's a good point too, yeah. So to me, most accurate does the scene description like you see here. It's going to describe the setting, the surroundings, all of that. Whereas best prose tends to dive in right in almost to the action and just describe what's going on right now. It's not necessarily describing the surroundings. So if you like this type of opening, yeah, you can start with most accurate and then switch to best prose.
Yeah, I'm with you and Manon. I've noticed that I agree with you that, most accurate. I love most accurate. It follows your beats the closest. But the only thing I find is if you put anything in there, such as like determination,
Yeah.
that word will show up almost in every stride. So you just have to kind of watch some of those words. Like, don't put piercing blue eyes because that will show up in every single stride every time she looks at something with her piercing blue eyes. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing about most accurate is you kind of have to watch your wording. And then, like you said, best prose, I love it. It has the greatest ideas. I also love it for the dialogue. So I have to agree with you guys on that. So
Awesome. I know this was very beginner focused. Again, for those who missed it, I have, if this was too much and you didn't have enough of a breakdown of some features, because there's a lot of features we didn't cover, y'all. There's so many features inside Sudowrite. We would spend a good 2, maybe 3 hours going over them all in detail. So there's this how to use Sudowrite video playlist that I made, where I break down each feature inside short videos. And then if you wanted some more advanced stuff, you can check out this 4-day Write With Me series. So if this class wasn't what you needed, check those out. Are there any questions? And before I stop or, announce that I'm going to stop recording, for those who missed it, just because I say I'm stopping the recording doesn't mean you have to leave. If you have some other questions you're not comfortable asking on this recording, I do hang around the class after I stop the recording. We tend to hang around, chat, people ask questions, or we just goof off. So when I announce I'm stopping the recording, you don't have to abandon ship. But for the purposes of the recording and to help others, does anybody have any questions? I'm watching chat. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you all for coming. And again, if you're interested, we have the 201 tomorrow and the 301 the day after, where we will start looking at ways we can refine things and some advanced techniques.